It's called the Modern Tuba. So essentially, you know, as a tuba player, if there's any tuba players listening, at least the way I come up, I know is not untypical of most tuba players. I kind of got typecasted. Like I was like this, like the young blonde girl ends up playing the flute, and like the short like stubby kid ends up playing the tuba. That was totally me, and I got typecasted in the role. And when you come up in school as a tuba player, you're not exposed to jazz education, largely, unless you live in a place like New Orleans where, you're able to have that. And the funny thing is, tuba is one of the original instruments in early jazz. Like that was the bass instrument, and nobody sees it that way nowadays, because a lot of times in school and education, it's all about the big band setting. And the modern big band does not include the tuba. So, coming up through middle school, coming up through high school, I was just never exposed to that. And it wasn't until I got into gigging where someone was like, hey, we're in this key, just walk a bass line. I was like, oh my gosh. And I would fake it and then go home and figure out, like, what does that even mean? I don't know what that means. And I would study that for like days and days and take a couple lessons. And then I was on another gig. So for me, a lot of it, I learned it by kind of getting my butt kicked on the bandstand and then going back and formally studying it. So I wanted to be able to offer tuba players specifically that kind of education that I felt like I never got early on, that I know a lot of tuba players don't get, like how to walk bass lines, how to be a bass player, how to improvise, how to hang, and on top of that, how to get gigs and maintain gigs. Because, when I was coming out of high school, I was told, if you're going to go into music, you're either going to be a performer, jazz or classical, and if you're not a good performer, if you're not a good musician, you're going to be a teacher, and that's what you do. And I was like, oh, I don't want to be that. I'm a good performer. I'm going to go play. And as a tuba player, when you go to college, you study classical music. 9 times out of 10, that's what you do. So you have these phenomenal tuba players that come out, and then they go and get hired somewhere, and someone says, hey man, there's this tune, they're playing guitar and it's in E, and they're like, just play this bass line, and the two players like stuck in the mud, like they don't know what to do. So, I want to be able to offer those kind of opportunities and some of the training that I've probably learned the hard way, and put it into not just a book, but an online course that's interactive where people can see videos. And I have a lot of great tuba players in the community. Some of the biggest names, like Tuba Gooding Jr., who plays with the Roots, like he's a part of it. He's sending some videos in, and I got a lot of people in the tuba community involved to just kind of get some information out. And I think a lot of us, most tuba players, probably learn the route that I did of kind of just figuring it out on the gigs and then going and doing the training later, again, outside of like a place like New Orleans. So this book is essentially that. It's offering those kind of things. It's called The Modern Tuba Player. It's a book, but it's also a 4-week online course. It'll be coming out mid to late May. So that's like my big hustle right now is trying to get that out.
Awesome. Well, I'm definitely looking forward to it. I agree with you. It wasn't until we played that I'd actually even shared the stage with a tuba. And I think some of the things that were so cool were just seeing how you were modernizing it or bringing it into these environments that I don't think many people were expecting, but it was more than appropriate. And in some cases, do you think that there's like some of the things I'm sure you get into in the book, what if a tuba player is out there, what are some things they can do to start? Besides obviously checking out your book and your course, what are some things they should do to start getting or bridging that gap from what they're being kind of told in school, or what are some things they can do to kind of get a more open mindset for the real world experiences they're going to probably face?
Yeah, the best thing you could do, and I hate saying this because I feel like this is what every jazz musician says, is like transcribe stuff, but not even that, is just listen to music and listen down to the bass lines and play those bass lines. I feel like I kind of had a leg up because I was never super passionate about classical music, and I always listened to a lot of modern music. And I transcribed before I knew transcribing was really, that's what you're supposed to do. I just did it for fun, So I feel like if it's, a young tuba player, I always put him hip to the bass players that I'm also a bass player. I play bass, and so that kind of gave me that leg up. So I would say study Ray Brown. I would say study your electric bass players, study your jackos, study like all the people that you would study as a bass player are the people that you should study as a tuba player. And those are the things that you start to realize, like, okay, if I studied this person, this lineage goes to this person, and this person studied this person. And don't be afraid to dive into the bass players. And I think that's the biggest thing. Tuba players listen to more tuba players, but there's not a lot of tuba players that are playing jazz nowadays. So, the best thing that you could do is listen to bass players and try to play those bass lines. And that's upright bass, that's electric bass, and that's key bass. Some of the key bass players are like the funkiest bass players that I've ever met. So the more that you listen to that stuff and just play along with it, it just becomes a part of you. Instead of it just like, okay, I'm going to do it now. I mean, I can give you technical information, and the book does some of that. But the first thing I say in my course is it's a lot of listening exercises and studying some of the greats that came before us. And to me, that's like your first route to that. And you're going to mess up. You're not going to feel right at first, but that's part of the fun. You're going to go on a gig and realize that you need to learn something else. And that's kind of the journey is, getting out of the practice room and actually applying that stuff. I think that's just as important as a study as well.